welcome everybody to another great episode of the Beyond Normal podcast. We got a special guest today. We're actually switching things up. We're talking to one of our friends in the VC world. As you all know, we typically talk to founders, but we definitely want to talk to different stakeholders in this space. And in this space right now, that one of the hot topics is around venture capital. So I'm actually excited to have Bruce Hamilton. He is the founder of Mech Ventures. And so he's doing some amazing things, focusing on investing in the next gen pop culture, what that looks like from a venture capital perspective. But before we get any further, I do want to bring Bruce onto the stage. How's it going, Bruce?
I'm doing well. How's everything with you? Thanks for having me here today.
Everything's good my way. Nice sunny day here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Hopefully the weather is good your way. I know you're just down the road. Before we go a little bit further into things about the weather, right, I do want to pass it to you to let folks know a little bit around your background and what got you to this point, right, prior to you being a venture capitalist and having that title. Like, tell us a little bit about Bruce before VC.
Man, Bruce before VC has lived 1,000 lives. I started my career in music and entertainment, actually. So I worked at Live Nation for a bit, doing social media, then worked at Sony Music, more specifically Epic Records, where I worked with Travis Scott, Fifth Harmony, like some other really amazing acts. Then ran a talent management company called Samurai Entertainment, where we manage artists, songwriters, producers. And then made the shift into tech about, I think around 2017. We launched our social media growth hacking platform called CrowdBoost, where we really help brands increase their social media engagement and their following. So we worked with really cool companies like Spotify and Reebok and several other like Fortune 500 brands. And then we used the profits from that and we created our mobile app builder called Wing Zero Apps. It's actually more of a mobile app builder / app development agency. We have a platform that allows people to build apps without coding. And then that's kind of led into launching Mech Ventures. It's just, I wanted that step back and I was like, what's the next step of my career? And I always saw myself as a creative and I wanted to I've always had a problem wanting to do like 10,000 things at once. So obviously I'm one person, so I couldn't do that. So I realized the natural progression was going into VC that allows me to work with multiple founders that are working on incredible companies and helping them take their vision, their ideas to the next level.
Appreciate that breakdown there, Bruce. And it sounds like it's not an easy task, right? Being transitioning over to VC, but you have your own business, right? And I feel like that foundation it's becoming more and more common in the space of VC. We're not just seeing trained finance people take on that VC hat. I'm curious to know for you, now that you're in this space, like what makes a founder the ideal person right now in this given moment? Somebody who was a previous founder or is a founder now, the right candidate when it comes to being that next VC, because we are seeing some shifts there in that space.
Being a founder is actually very helpful in this space now because you have that experience from running a company and knowing the mistakes that you've made, so you can help founders avoid those pitfalls and those mistakes. And you can kind of help guide them along the way. And also you just have an understanding for what being a founder is like. Being a founder it's not easy. You see on Instagram, you see the glitz and the glamour, but being a founder is tough. It takes a lot of mental toughness to do it. There's some days where you really question if everything is worth it, and then there's some days where you can imagine not doing it. I think it's a great time to be a founder and then shift over to VC because the common complaint a lot of people were having with venture capital was a lot of these venture capitalists were never founders, and so they can't understand the founder perspective. And so their whole thing is just like, if I give you this cash, I want you to 10x this in 3 years, but not really understand like the inner workings of actually running a company and like the psychology and the mental toughness it takes to do that.
Appreciate that breakdown there. To some it may seem self-explanatory, but we do need to keep reinforcing that Because as we do know, we all know the folks who are in this startup space, there's some disparities when it comes to who the checks are given to. And I think a big part of that is the person writing the check. Who do they look like? What their background is? And so I'm really excited to see Bruce, you and your team actually taking on this challenge because it is no small task at this point.
No, it's definitely not a small task at all. And, a founder is actually, that's one of the big parts of what they're looking at. Obviously, your business model matters, like what your revenue looks like matters, but the big key component is the founder and their team. They're really investing more so into you than they are more so the model. They're investing in you that you could bring this idea to fruition or take it to the next level. They want to know that you and your team can do this, and can you and your team pivot if a pivot needs to happen. You'd be surprised how many times a pivot needs to happen. I've made a pivot multiple times over the span of like my entrepreneurial career. So they just want to know, do you have what it takes to really take this thing to the next level?
Got it. And I believe in you breaking down your experience with your business. It sounded like you were referencing some sort of no code, right? Options for some of the solutions out there where there's very little coding that's needed so that the businesses can focus on their idea. I feel like we are at a point where the ideas, there's a premium for having that right idea in this very moment. So I'm curious for you to know from you, like in terms of the direction for Mech Ventures, in terms of investing in that future of pop culture, outside of the tech piece where like you mentioned the Spotify's and things like that part makes sense. But I'm curious, like, why focus on pop culture and the ideas that are being created a lot of times by people that look like me and you, right? That's the mission for Mech Ventures. Why is that the focus?
Well, I kind of came to that conclusion just because pop culture is something that I know very well. I consider myself a pop culture enthusiast, and also with my background in music and entertainment, I've not only do I know pop culture very well, I've helped create pop culture moments. And so I've looked at venture capital really kind of the same as the music industry, same game, different players. So I'm just bringing my knowledge of the music and entertainment space and bringing it to pop culture. But the main reason why I wanted to do pop culture is because and when I say we, I mean like people of color, we typically dictate pop culture. We create these moments, but we don't ever really have any control in it. We don't ever have any financial stake in it. So I wanted to kind of really help change that and start investing in these companies that are really starting to create these moments and really help shift the narrative.
I appreciate you framing it that way. We do see a lot of the talent in entertainment that looks like us, but like you said, when it comes to the CEO, who's the boss, a lot of times it's some old guy who does not look like us. I'll be honest, and so I do see that parallel, and I'm excited to see when it comes to brands and things like that are being created by people that look like us, really taking ownership of it, right, and making sure if it's something that we're wearing, right, we're wearing products and things like that. I wear black owned brands. That I feel like that's pop culture to me. Like that's what we're really good at already. Like we're the ones setting the trend and things like that. So why not take it to the next level? Leverage all this tech out here and making sure that we're getting a significant piece of the pie.
It's funny you bring that up because I actually consciously made an effort maybe like 5 years ago to stop wearing blatant brand placement on like my hoodies or my t-shirts because essentially we're paying to be walking billboards. And people don't look at it that way. Like, yeah, you're paying a high dollar cost, but you're essentially paying to become a marketing tool. So I look at it like if I'm not getting any cut of this, I'm not going to walk around actively promoting your brand. And I think people need to look at themselves as not as a billboard, but kind of as from a marketing perspective, it's like, yo, even if you're just a regular everyday person working a 9 to 5, you still have a lot more influence than you think you do. You're going into your workplace, everybody's seeing you wear, maybe like a Gucci t-shirt, and you're just giving out free. Actually, you're not even giving out free advertising. You're paying them to go out and advertise their brand for them, and you're getting nothing in return. So we kind of have to look at it from like that standpoint.
That's powerful there, Bruce. I can think back to LL when he wore the FUBU in the
And the
Gap
Gap
commercial, right?
commercial,
And
that
it
was
was just,
huge to do
that's
that.
huge, right? And it's just like, okay, they were trying to leverage him, but okay, like they don't make hats. So this hat goes real nice with their brand. So at the same time, while I'm selling their stuff, let me make sure I'm selling something to mine. And that's like where it makes like I'm really excited to see more of that moving forward. And I think we're in a really good position to leverage our time, like you said. Like we are walking billboards for what's cool a lot of times, and so why not have your own brand on?
Yeah, exactly. I don't think we really understand like the power of our influence. I know we talk about it a lot, but I don't think we truly understand that like just the regular everyday person has more influence than they think they do, and everyone needs to understand like kind of the business model behind that and how to, if you can, possibly monetize it.
I love that. And so there's a couple values that I know are at the core of Mech Ventures. I have them pulled up here. The first one is building community, earning trust is the second one, and then playing to win. I know community is big right now. That's the buzzword, one of the buzzwords on everybody's mind, and trust has been something as well that we've seen real positive impact by the businesses that are deliberate in earning that trust. But the playing to win, I want you to dig a little bit into that because I think that's a mindset that we don't always kind of own for some of the businesses in our communities. And I feel like that was a real differentiator as I was going through the Mech Venture site. So can you elaborate a little bit on that play to win value, what it means for you and how it plays in for the businesses you're investing in?
So our main thing with play to win is, so when people see like a Black VC firm, they typically start thinking in the mindset of charity. They start thinking, okay, this is another PLC only fund where they're just going to invest in Black only businesses or businesses of people of color. And they don't think that it's going to be profitable. That they look at it really, a lot of people look at it as a charity case, but we want to really change that narrative. No, we're playing to win. Like we're playing to become the best VC firm in the marketplace and also make sure, we bring back a really great return for our LPs or investors. And so for us, like one of our big things is like we're not a PLC only fund. We invest in everyone as long as you're building something really innovative that fits within the theme of our thesis, which is investing in the future of pop culture. I personally believe that inclusivity is the key to progress. So I'm not necessarily a big fan of doing segmented markets because essentially people of color or Black people, we just want the same opportunity as everybody else. We don't want to be segregated to our own market. We want to have equal opportunity in the playing field, and so that's why we say we're playing to win.
I love that, Bruce. Again, these are concepts that for a lot of people they're kind of self-explanatory, but for others, like our businesses, like you said, they're not charities. We make money, we make profit. Why not have the same access that everybody's after? You touched on pop culture a couple of times. Are there industries that you're seeing now where pop culture, right, is maybe growing, the impact of pop culture is growing that maybe underlooked? Some industries that maybe Mech Ventures is looking to invest more in? Are there a couple areas where you see a lot of opportunity?
Yeah, like for us, we're pretty industry agnostic. But some of the industries we are looking at is gaming, esports. We believe that is a huge space right now that a lot of people, especially in like the Black community, is like overlooking. I mean, I might go on a whole thing about that. Or like, every parent I come across, I'm like, let your kids play video games. Let them play as many video games as they want. I know it sounds crazy, but there are people out here who are making millions of dollars just playing video games. There was a 15-year-old a few years ago who won the Fortnite World Cup. 15-year-old kid won $3 million just from playing video games. And so there's a whole untapped opportunity over there. It's already a multi-billion-dollar industry, and we're literally just at the beginning of it. Like that's going to grow. So that's a big space we're looking into. Music tech, social media, the future of work. The metaverse is something that we're really big on right now. I know that's like a super buzzword, and not a lot of people really understand what that is. So when people do ask about what's the metaverse, I'd simply say, watch Ready Player One. That is the metaverse. That is a perfect example of what the metaverse is going to be. And then also Web3. Web3 is going to be really big. Crypto, obviously, we're still kind of on the fence about NFTs. Obviously, there's a lot of different variables with that. So like we're still kind of on the fence of where we're going to be at with that. But yeah, we're pretty industry agnostic. As long as it fits within the theme of our thesis, we're open to look at anything.
Appreciate that. You mentioned some of these are buzzwords, the Web3s, the cryptos, and things like that. We've had some founders on who are tapping into this space. The cryptos and some of the Web3 applications, their utility is really ambiguous, right? So they say that they do certain stuff really fast, really efficiently, better than legacy models, which is cool, but they've kind of left it undefined, right, in terms of the defined use cases, right? And so I think for them to get to the level that we want these cryptos and these Web3 applications to get to, there needs to be businesses that come along and really almost take a gamble on switching their capabilities over, switching their way of thinking into these new Web3 applications and the different way of thinking. And then that utility that they create is going to make the newest crypto that much more valuable. And so I see it being like a win-win kind of synergy moving forward versus, hey, let's just all adopt Bitcoin, right? I don't think it'll be that. I don't think there'll be a lot of players in this space, and it'll give more opportunity to small business owners and founders that are starting out. That's just the way I look at it. I'm hoping that it works out, but that's my feeling so far.
Yeah, I think it's very early in the space right now, like a very, very, very early. So this actually kind of reminds me of like the .com era, where it's kind of a gold rush for everyone kind of diving into Web3 and NFTs and really trying to figure out what utilities are going to work. And so I know you're saying there's a lot of people haven't found like solid use cases just yet, because we're in the very beginning stages. So I think right now you're going to see a bunch of companies come in here trying to build stuff, and then from the ashes of all of this, because not everyone and not every company in Web3 is going to take off. But then you're probably going to see like the next Amazon, the next Facebook, or the next Google pop out of this as you see what's strong utilities. But yeah, I think right now everyone's really hedging their bets, especially in the VC space. Everyone's hedging their bets, kind of betting on what companies from here are going to be the ones to take over and become the next big entities for the next, 15, 20 years.
Got it. So you mentioned the idea around VC. You just laid it out as hedging their bets, right? And so everybody's after that next, like you said, that next unicorn, that next, the next Bezos, Zuckerberg business. We all know those names, right? And so I have a lot of founders that come to me and they ask questions around, I want to give VC a trial. Like, how do I get in front of venture capitalists? Is this right for me? And so, like for you, are there businesses where it doesn't make sense to go the VC route? I asked that instead of asking the question of what businesses fit within it, because I think there's some defined companies out there and routes out there. But in terms of, are there businesses that truly aren't, quote unquote, like that VC model in this current times?
I can't think of anything that won't fit it. It really comes down to the team and their business model. So what you need to understand, or what people need to understand, is you get VC money to move fast. So the moment you take that first VC check, the clock is ticking. That means you're on borrowed time now. It's time for you to really take this to the next level and to really try to multiply this return. So we tell founders, like, hey, don't take VC funding unless you're ready to move fast. So it depends on like how much you're willing to move. And then also, I guess one of the common myths is some people want to do VC, but don't necessarily understand what comes with that. Like you're either going to take on debt or you're going to give up equity. So you kind of have to understand that before you go into taking VC funding. But yeah, go into VC funding when you're ready to really accelerate and you have a game plan to move fast. Like the moment you get that check, you need to like press play on the plan that you have in place.
Thanks for that, Bruce. Again, it comes up a lot for me. It's okay to say no. This isn't the route for me.
And it's not. And VC funding is not for everybody. And we've had some really great founders that I've talked to that have said every problem that they've ever had in their company has been because they took VC funding. So you have to understand, like, is it right for your business? Is it necessary too? So I kind of look at it from like a music industry standpoint, where people are always just like, when is it time for me to go to a label? And I used to always say, go to a label when your demand exceeds your supply. When you don't really have the funding to like take it to the next level, but the demand is there. That's when you go to a label. And it's the same with VC. It's like when the demand is high, but then you need the capital to meet that demand. That's when you go to VC funding. But don't just go to VC funding. Just should do it. And it kind of sucks sometimes because you're constantly seeing the news of people raising these super huge rounds, and like it's almost turned into like that's all tech crunches now. It's like that's kind of in the tech industry. It's kind of just known like that's all tech crunches now. You go to TechCrunch when you announce your big funding round. I don't even think TechCrunch will touch your company unless you're announcing a round at this point. So you have to understand that concept of don't just get VC funding just to get VC funding. Get VC funding if you truly, truly need it, and also only raise as much as you need. Don't just try to go and try to collect the biggest check possible, because then your valuation's high and then you got to match that. And there's nothing worse than having to raise a down round when you've now got to lower your valuation because you've raised too much money, and you just couldn't really scale it the way you wanted to.
Appreciate that so much, Bruce. Like, transparency is key in this VC space. And I appreciate you saying it's okay if it's not for you. The news tells you otherwise. Like with these big check signings, if you tap in with any startups, you know what the check sizes look like. They're very big numbers. Numbers you can't go to the bank and get that kind of cash. And so it kind of throws people, I think it kind of just throws their reality off a little bit in certain cases.
Yeah, because you raise that big check, and then people are just like, now your investors are now like, okay, you got this big check, we want a 10x in like 3 to 5 years. Whether you do, you go IPO, you exit, but you need an exit strategy, and we need it to be done like 3 to 5 years. Go for it.
Yeah, that's crazy. That 10x, people, for those listening in, there aren't very many ways to get a return like that in the normal market, stock market, like just traditional markets, real estate, whatever you want to call it. Like it's hard to get that. So for somebody to come to you and tell you to essentially like you got to spend this money as fast as you can to get us where we need to be, that's a type of nerve-wracking experience I myself wouldn't want to be a part of. And I know there's some others out there that's just not their cup of tea.
And there's nothing wrong with bootstrapping either. There's a lot of bootstrapping may take you a little bit longer, but you maintain full control and you move kind of at your own pace without a bunch of pressure. I mean, look at MailChimp. They bootstrapped for like 20 years and they eventually got a big payday.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a long play with bootstrapping, but it's well worth it if you're willing to stick it out.
Good stuff. So I know I've had the pleasure of listening to Bruce speak at a conference, and there was something that really got caught in my brain as you were speaking around really investing in the founder, right? Outside of the business. So could you let us know a little bit, like what are you looking for in the founder outside of the business? We know there's certain industries, but what are you looking for in the founders that you invest in?
In the founder, I'm looking for someone who's ambitious. Well, let me not say because my partner Mario is talking to founders too. We're looking for people that are ambitious, that are very strong-willed. They have a strong vision. and they're not easily rattled. And to be honest, to be very frank, we're looking for somebody that we would want to deal with for the next 10 years. And that's like the key component. So you could have a great business model, but if you are a nightmare to deal with, then, it might not work out. So yeah, we're looking for people that, that we really could believe can pull this vision off. If you had previous experience, that's always a plus. I wouldn't necessarily say with us, but if you go to traditional VC firms, they love seeing, founders who have, this is maybe they're on their second, third company. They love seeing that because you at least have a proven track record in a sense. But yeah, when it comes down to it, it comes down to this: they see you as someone that they want to partner with and talk to weekly or monthly for the next 5 to 10 years, and that's the main thing.
Yeah, that's a big one. I know it goes like in the corporate world, it may not be like the PC thing to say and things like that, but we all want to work with people like we can get along with. Like if we can't get along with you, it's going to be very hard, and it's going to make work feel more like work versus us working on something that's going to change the world. And so that kind of transparency, again, it may not always be said, but I think it definitely needs to be heard more often.
Yeah. And that's vice versa too. That should go for founders looking for VCs. Like that's something founders should look at. Is your key partner at the company or the VC firm you're talking to? Is this someone you want to deal with for the next 5 to 10 years? Is this person going to have your back when they go to the VC firm and say, hey, maybe this company's not doing that well? Are they going to have your back? So you got to look at that too from that perspective as well. So it's not, I wouldn't say the power isn't solely on us. Power is on them too. It's an equal partnership. So they got to make sure that whoever the firms are that they partner with are these firms that are going to stick with them when things are a little rocky.
That's a two-way street right there, Bruce. I think that's a gem. That's what I call a gem on this podcast. You dropping that and just not saying like the ball isn't in one corner, right? Like both sides have some power in this relationship and making sure that it works.
Yeah, I mean, see it happen all the time where not VCs, but founders get a term sheet and then they're just like, well, I don't really like how the VC kind of operate through this whole process, whether they're super pushy or just kind of rude. And there's numerous cases where they've decided this money is just not worth having to deal with them.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Every dollar's not the same. So I
all money's not good money.
Yeah, facts. You shared so much on this interview, Bruce. We love having people again who are key stakeholders in the entrepreneur founder space. VC is here to stay. We know there's some challenges in the space, but I appreciate you and your team at Mech Ventures, Bruce, really taking on this challenge. It is not easy, folks. There aren't very many people that look like Bruce doing what Bruce is doing right now, making sure we have that next generation of founders that are diverse in thought and just represent, where the future is going. So I commend you and your team, Bruce. In closing, though, I want to pass it to you. How can founders reach out and stay in tune with the brand over at Mech Ventures?
Oh yeah, you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok at Mech VC, MECHVC, or you could come to our website, mech.ventures. We're actively looking for founders right now as we just started investing maybe a month ago. So please, if you think you're ready for VC funding, we would love to talk to you. So please reach out.
Thanks for that, Bruce. And then what's that one final thought you want folks who are listening in? We have a lot of founders listening in. We have people who are on the fence about starting businesses listening in. Like, what's that final thought you want our listeners to take away from this conversation, from the nuggets, from the gems that you shared today?
There's actually a quote that I tell like all first-time founders or founders that are gearing up to get their MVP out. It's one of my favorite quotes from Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn. Says, if you're not embarrassed by your first iteration, then you've launched too late.
Ooh, Okay, get out there and fail the right way. I love that,
Yeah,
Bruce.
just go out there and fail, man. It's okay. Don't be
I
afraid
love
to
that.
fail publicly. Just go out there and do it.
Ain't nothing wrong with that. So, again, I just want to thank you, Bruce, for coming on the platform, sharing your story. I know the listeners, as they listen to this, they got their notepad out. I got stickies all across my desk. You spit plenty of gems on us on your background going from a founder to VC. I'm excited to see more folks take on that hat. And I definitely just commend you again, you and your team, for taking on this challenge because it's not easy. And for all those folks listening in, thanks for tuning in to another great episode of the Beyond Normal podcast.